Jeff Iafrate, your host for today, filling in for Adam Baydoun, Sam Flannel. And Sam, I have an interesting question, and I'll go around the room for this because this is something that I sat on after the draft, and I've talked with some of my friends about it. And I think it's an interesting question because we know every year Brad Holmes, so far, 2 for 2, Brad Holmes finds somebody. I mean, the first year was Amon-Ra St. Brown. He followed it up the second year, James Houston, Malcolm Rodriguez. Like this, it's not a matter of if, it's when. And this year, the draft's over with, and we've been talking a lot about Brian Branch, Jack Campbell, Jahmyr Gibbs, Hendon Hooker. But what about these other guys, right? What about a Broderick Martin? What about a Colby Sorsdahl? What about Antoine Green? What about these guys? And I want to ask you first before I give my answer. I'll go last. Out of the players drafted, who is the Amon-Ra, the James Houston, the Malcolm Rodriguez in this class this year? Who do you think?
Well, I hope that it's Broderick Martin because there's still a lot of questions. I know we've talked about it on a lot of shows. Did the Lions do enough to address the defensive line? Did they do enough to where they don't allow the franchise record for rushing yards in the game to the Carolina Panthers? Did they do enough to where they avoid scoring 45 points in a game and losing? And Broderick Martin, he was obviously somebody that they coveted. They traded up to get him. Brad Holmes traded up to get him. And if Broderick Martin has the type of impact that even, let's say, an Ali McNeil had when he was also drafted in the third round, I think this would really, really help their defense. All he has to do is become a rotational piece that gets snaps on the defensive line, is a linchpin in their run defense, and gets some interior pressure. If he does that, I think that Broderick Martin might end up being one of the better picks in the draft because it was such a need. And I know I was a little bit puzzled with them waiting so long to do it, but maybe they saw something in Broderick Martin. I don't think he's the type of guy that's going to be game-wrecking or dominant, but I think he can be solid. Mm-hmm. And if he is solid, given the fact that they need a defensive line presence so much, I think that Broderick Martin can be seen as one of the better picks in this entire draft, like including first and second round if he pans out. So I'm going to go with Broderick Martin as my sleeper.
And by the way, feel free, call in 313-552-6322. Share your thoughts. Who's the sleeper in the 2023 NFL Draft? Who could be the Amon-Ra, the James Houston, the Malcolm Rodriguez? And JB, I'll go to you next. Which of these late round picks are you looking forward to seeing this year?
I'm actually looking forward to seeing the wide receiver from North Carolina. What is it?
Antoine Green.
Yeah. Definitely an interesting name. I didn't see a lot of film on the guy, but from what I've read and from what I've heard, like he is progressing solid as a receiver, especially the last 2 seasons at North Carolina. So just getting him here in the mix, especially with J-Mo gone for 6 games, seeing the kind of production he might be able to provide this, Lions team, it'll definitely be interesting. I'll say that.
What about you, Gabby?
Not necessarily a late pick, but if we're comparing him to St. Brown, I'm going to say Brian Branch because I think he's going to come in with that chip on the shoulder, like that iconic clip from Hard Knocks with St. Brown running through everyone that was picked before him. I think Branch is going to come in with that same fire underneath him and having something to prove, especially being the only one that came back to walk across that stage.
And he was easily, I had, if you would have told me Brian Branch fell in the second round before the draft, I'd be like, you're crazy. We'll see. I mean, he's a first-round pick, and I think that's going to piss him off. And I'll take a pissed-off DB with Aaron Glenn. I think he's going to turn him into a solid player. I'll go easily Broderick Martin. And that's why I love what you said, just because. And the reason why I say Broderick Martin, because Brian Branch is my favorite pick, to agree with the Gabby there, but with Broderick Martin, that's somebody that no one's really talking about. And I think for him and his size, like, especially, I was watching the draft with Michael Gentry, our Red Wings beat reporter, a good friend of mine, and we're sitting there watching the draft, and we see the Lions trade up. We're like, who are they trading up for? Broderick Martin, the 6'5", 350-pound defensive tackle out of Western Kentucky. And then the more you look, I'm like, well, I'm trying to figure out who Broderick Martin is. And my gosh, not only his size, but what Brad says about him with, how fluid he is at his size. And Neil Rule always brings up on Big D Energy, anything to prevent 300 yards rushing against the Carolina Panthers. And here you go. Here's a big man. A man who could fill space in the middle. Now, does he have the pressure, the pass rush upside? I don't know. But still, he is a massive human being, and I think he'll help out against the run. JB, send him through. Who do we got calling the show?
We got Mark here. He wants to call and talk about the draft with you guys.
What's going on, Mark? Welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning, guys. I just wanted to say real quick, you guys are awesome. Definitely have your finger on the pulse of the city. I was in shock like everyone else on draft night. I watched you guys do your thing at Fifth Avenue. So native Detroiter, live in Fort Worth, but I still pay attention to everything on the daily. Colby Sorsdahl, I think, is really interesting. Is he a North Dakota State guy, if I remember correctly? I mean, that's a real football team. I mean, they win championships. They constantly play for championships. The dude is huge. Sounds like he's got a really nasty, mean streak. I mean, the formula is there. All great points about the defensive tackle because we need it so bad.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't think people should sleep on that guy either. I think he's got a good shot to be a nice part of the rotation.
And
have a great morning, you guys.
And by the way, Mark,
go ahead.
Thank you for calling the show. Thank you for supporting the network. And I want to comment on what you just said because Corby Sorsdahl, and to kind of just help you out here, he went to William and Mary, but still a guy who's
that's right.
A guy who's very versatile. To your point, Mark. I mean, that's what drew Brad to him. I mean, he played right tackle, then he moved to guard in the bowl game, I believe, or at the East versus West, the game, the Invitational, and then he played a little bit of center. So the guy plays three different positions on the offensive line. You got him in the 6th round. I mean, the 5th round. It's great value. So it's a great point, Mark. Hopefully he can start some.
Yeah, we got big offensive line contracts coming up. Yeah, have a great morning, guys.
Appreciate the call.
Thank you.
See, and that's somebody that I was going to mention too. But Broderick Martin's just he's the most intriguing one. But Colby's somebody that not only is a perfect fit for what the Lions need on their offensive line, but character-wise, he likes fishing. So Frank Ragnow. They're all going to love him. And for a guy who could play multiple positions, you lose Evan Brown, who kind of filled that role a little bit. He could play guard, he could play center. Now you got basically a taller and bigger Evan Brown who can come in and play that role.
Well,
so solid.
If somehow Colby Sorsdahl hits and he's that diamond in the rough 5th round pick, and you have discussions of whether you want to pay guys moving forward, maybe Colby Sorsdahl is a guy on a rookie contract, is sort of I would say a chance to make your strength even stronger. I didn't hate that pick at all. If he actually turns out, if he actually becomes something, if he actually becomes a starter and he's on the cheap, this Detroit Lions offensive line will just continue to be elite down the road. So that's a good one. I like the Colby Sorsdahl pick as well.
Big Con 51 says the fact that Brad gave up so much for Broderick makes you think Brad knows something. He did have an eye for Donald. And listen, if Broderick Martin could be 1% of Aaron Donald, I think we'd all be ecstatic. But you're right. You're spot on, Big Con. I mean, if Brad has an eye for defensive tackles, I mean, Levi didn't really necessarily pan out yet, but we don't know. He was injured. Still a little bit upside there. Liam McNeil, solid. He clearly can tell if you can stop the run. And here you go, 6'5", 350 human being later. He'll be just fine. I think they're going to need Broderick Martin there. And then you got veterans in that room too. I mean, you got Bugs, you got Benito Jones. So great supporting cast around Broderick Martin. But JB, send the caller through. Who do we got?
All right, I will send you guys Todd.
Todd, welcome to the show. What do you want to discuss, my man?
Hey, just want to speak about Goff and getting rid of him.
Okay.
We've got, you keep that money and you're building the Lions team around him. We always talk about how these average quarterbacks are able to succeed because of the team itself and not the quarterback. So hoping that maybe we get rid of him and go with Hendon and we're able to keep our core together. I mean, I don't know how many people have really spoken about that.
Yeah, and by the way, you're spot on. The ideology you just brought up is why I'm excited to see what Hendon Hooker is, because even if he's Jared Goff, let's not even say he's, some superstar quarterback. Let's just say Hendon Hooker's average. Imagine having an average quarterback like Jared, because I believe Jared's average. I mean, he has good years. He's probably a little better than average. But if Hendon could even get to that point, Todd, you have him on a rookie deal. And then you have Jonah Jackson, Amon-Ra, Penei Sewell, these guys coming up. And now we're talking more and more about free agents that could potentially be available or via trade, like the 49ers just did with, landing Hargraves and getting McCaffrey last year. They do this because you have a quarterback on a rookie deal. So you're spot on, Todd. It opens up a ton of possibilities.
Yeah, we go to about an 8-year window with him.
What'd you say?
We go to about an 8-year window with him.
Yes. Yeah. No, you're I mean, especially, listen, if Hendon Hooker, they brought up his age. Brad and Dan commented how much they actually prefer his age. He's 25, he's mature, and they still, I mean, quarterbacks nowadays, you play till you're near 40. So at 25 years old, you can get 10, 15 years out of them. So solid pick, but appreciate you calling,
right.
Todd. Thank you.
Yeah, take care.
Yep, take care. Well, what do you think about that, Sam Flannel?
Well, it's a conversation that certainly needs to be had. The Jared Goff discussion is obviously one that is very, very polarizing, even amongst Woodward sports hosts, and I totally get it. He obviously he had a great year last year, a worthy Pro Bowl, 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions in this Ben Johnson system. Obviously has amazing rapport with Amon-Ra St. Brown, but if he does that again, we keep talking about it. He might ask for $45-50 million a year, and I honestly think he would be
$50 million.
Exactly, Smokey. I think he would be justified in doing so, given what you see Daniel Jones and his 15 touchdown passes make. It's a conversation that certainly needs to be had.
Let me just call some comments out here, just so we get some clarification on what we're discussing. Okay, Paul Thomas, brilliant caller. Let's dump a top 3 quarterback in the NFC for a college kid with a torn ACL. Now, Paul, let me just break this down for you. I'm not saying to go ahead and just dump Goff, and you're assuming that at least I don't have any film on Hendon Hooker. This is for Brad and Dan. They're going to be able to watch Hendon all year in practice, right? I'm not there in Allen Park every single day at practice. I'm not there talking to Hendon Hooker after practice, before practice. Like, that's their
I'll
job.
keep my eyes out.
That is Gabby's job.
There you
she
go.
will be doing all of that and more. So you could go to her for those questions. But for me, that's their job to evaluate Hendon Hooker. I'm not saying bench Goff, start Hendon. If he stinks, they'll know he stinks. And at that point, you think, okay, well, we don't have a better option than Goff. We'll go ahead and stick with him. But if Hendon has higher upside, I mean, right, you saw reports years ago when I joked about it yesterday with Patrick Mahomes. I never believed any of those reports. Matt Mahomes looks good in practice. All these things with different arm angles. They were right. He's a stud. So my point being, if Hendon shows those things in practice, then yeah, you're going to have to at least consider him. But I'm not saying blindly just start Hendon and send Jared packing. Like, Jared's fine. He's fine. He can win a division. He can win a playoff game. But Hendon Hooker, there's a ton of upside there, and there's a reason why Brad said that in the press conference. Love his upside. You don't just say that. Like, there's clearly they see something in Hendon Hooker, and we'll see if he pans out. It's up to him.
Absolutely. I see Hendon Hooker as the 3rd best quarterback prospect in this last draft. I think he's a better prospect than Anthony Richardson and a better prospect than Will Levis, and the Lions got him in the 3rd round. If Jared Goff asks for too much money and they want to sort of hand the keys over to Hendon Hooker and give them more flexibility to keep up this great roster that they're creating and supplement it even more, I wouldn't necessarily hate it. It is a very, very good contingency plan.
It's at least a little bit of leverage.
Yes.
We don't know what Hendon is, but he's still a first-round pick who you took in the 3rd round.